Welcome back to another episode of our sports podcast here at the Santa Fe New Mexican, and we're recording this on Tuesday, literally seconds away from Decision 2.0, where LeBron James thought he was going to announce his retirement there, Barron. Instead, he's doing a marketing campaign, which is incredibly annoying and disappointing. What's your hot take on the whole thing?
This is my shocked face.
Oh man!
Yeah, who cares, man?
Waited all morning to see him say, "You know what? This is my farewell tour. I expect a handcrafted rocking chair when I go to San Antonio." Nothing. No, he's promoting an alcohol. Apparently, so
yeah,
great.
Not even a good one.
Speaking of marketing, like I told you guys before we even started the show, I don't know if any of you are coffee drinkers. I am a coffee drinker.
Uh-oh.
Thanks to my beautiful bride, Sarah. She got me hooked on coffee like 8 years ago. And so I don't know if you noticed, but coffee has gotten really, really, really expensive at the store. I went to the store on Sunday before my beloved Redskins played to buy some coffees, get some resupplies. This bad boy cost $28 at the store. This thing used to cost $9, and I used to get mad about it. Now this bad boy is $28 at the store. So I had to contact my friends at Amazon.com and have them deliver me some coffee for cheaper.
Yeah, it's a good thing you got a guy there, right?
Yep. Yeah. Apparently, Jeff Bezos, he's from New Mexico, so there's some sympathy there. But yeah, it's I guess the tariffs have been slow to hit Amazon.com. So right now, coffee's only $18, $18 on Amazon. So if you want to resupply before it gets to the $40 level, you might want to do that. I don't know if are you a coffee drinker?
That advertisement.
Yeah. Dunkin' Donuts. Go buy it at Amazon.com. Yeah, I should have just bought the really cheap kind, the generic kind. But even then, it's like, good night, man. Between the letdown from LeBron James and coffee being expensive, I don't even know what to do anymore.
Oh, come on, man. When you go with the cheap generic ones, you never know what you're going to get with those. So you might as well go with a name brand that you kind of know and is more reliable.
Yeah.
So, I'm not speaking as a coffee drinker, because the only time I drink coffee is when it's in a beer.
It's got to have alcohol in it.
Yeah.
It's got to get spiked, man. And look, that's a nice segue into what I want to talk to you about. Looks like the sun is right in your face. What is that?
Oh my gosh! What did I do? I did nothing, man. I guess. Well, it is October 7th. Supposedly
it's the rapture
again. Yeah. So apparently, I'm going to be seeing you guys later. Bye.
This is getting called up. Look at that. The rapture's literally leaking into this side of the frame.
I know. And I'm surprised our producer didn't call me out on that, but apparently he's just like, yeah, whatever. Yeah, we're just gonna go with this.
It's like we're looking at you through a glass of milk now. Good Lord.
Yeah, I know. I'm just gonna get wider and wider, and pretty soon I'm just gonna be gone.
It's gonna fade. Well, I guess that brings to the end of the podcast this week. James got sucked up.
I guess you're on your own, Will. You better figure out high school sports here in a second.
Oh man, I gotta go to that soccer game this afternoon. All right, yeah, darn it. No, but hey, dude. Speaking of the rapture and alcohol, you had yourself an interesting weekend. You took the weekend off while I was slaving away at the high school football, and then I had to do college football, and I'm writing stuff on the Highlands football team. But you had a chance to go down to Phoenix and watch what was otherwise a meaningless NFL game.
Yeah,
turned into the talk of the weekend.
I know. I know. Thanks to Mercado, but. Yeah, so my girlfriend's grandson is a huge Cardinals fan, and he's never been to an NFL game, or at least a Cardinals NFL game. So they decided that they would treat him to his first game, and we decided, hey, why not the Titans? Because the Titans aren't very good. The Cardinals are, supposed to be better, and you would think that it would be an easy win for the Cardinals. No, not at all. I mean that 71-yard run that should have been 72, except for DeMarcado deciding that he could hit the eject button just before he gets to the goal line and get away with it. That was really the beginning of the end of the Cardinals for that game, and you could just slowly see the energy fade out of Cardinal Stadium when that happened. Then you saw the interception / fumble / touchdown for the Titans, and that really just. That was the pinprick that just let all the air out of that stadium. And then the Boo Birds came out, and then came the the questionable 3rd and 8, or we're going to run the ball for 2 yards and kick it and rely on our defense to win this game, which didn't work at all. So it's a good thing that I'm ascending to heaven now because I don't have to see what's going to happen next week.
Well, haven't we seen it enough where guys are supposed to carry the ball through the end zone? It happens like once or twice a year.
We just saw it the week before with Adonai Mitchell. Oh, and by the way, Adonai Mitchell did not play until like the 4th quarter when the Colts are up like 40-6, and he didn't see a lick of the field until then. What do you think is going to happen to DeMarcado, man? I mean,
right.
that guy might have to pay to go watch a game next week.
Well, he might be on another movie because Amazon literally just came out with that Glenn Powell movie or the series where a guy he ruins his college career by dropping the ball as he crosses the goal line. They could actually make a movie about this. It's about this guy from Arizona. Look, it probably would make for a good movie, except it was the Cardinals against the Titans in Week 5. So it's like, is that really cinema? Is that really worth a movie?
No, it's not. It's just called another Cardinals loss. If you ask the people in Phoenix, it's like they were ready for it. The moment that whole thing happened, it was like literally there was about half dozen Cardinal fans around us that were just like, "Yep, same old Cardinals."
And the thing about going to a sporting event, like you and I cover sports for a living, but to actually go to an event as a fan is just so different because you're just used to certain levels of access and just you watch the game differently when you're trying to take notes and do a job for it. But to sit there in the stands, you very quickly realize how slowly paced NFL and college games are because there's so many media timeouts.
All the timeouts and everything. And then you add the replays too. It can make what should be a 3-hour event into like 3.5, almost 4 hours in some cases. I know they've sped up the game a little bit to a certain degree, but still, it's really a long day. You pretty much spend about 7 or 8 hours at that place. If you get there early because you want to beat the parking, and then you just kind of mill about for a couple of hours before the game. Then you finally get to the game, which lasts about 3.5, 4 hours, and then you got to figure out, okay, what are we going to do for the next 2 hours? Because you got to wait for parking to decongest so that way you can get out of there. Because if you try to get out when everybody else does, forget it. You're just going to be standing in a parking lot for the next 45 minutes to an hour at least before you get out of there. Oh, and by the way, thank you, Uber, for every time we tried to get out of the Westgate area, which is where the Cardinal Stadium is. It kept sending us back to the black lot, which is on the south side of the stadium, instead of where we were on the north end. Every time we tried to repin our placement and to get the driver to go there, it kept sending us back to the black lot. And we're like, okay, we're done with this.
Last time I went to a Cardinals game was just prior to my favorite football team announcing their name change. It was a year or two before they announced the name change. And
you could truly celebrate your team's name, right?
Yeah. That's when you could probably wear the gear. Except when we were walking into the stadium, there's only maybe 45,000 fans at the game because it's the Cardinals and Redskins.
Yeah.
But we were just verbally accosted by people protesting outside the stadium. And it was the thing about living here and having the Cardinals next door is usually tickets are really cheap to a Cardinal game. That's some of the cheapest NFL tickets that you can get. It's easy access. It's an easy drive. But yeah, you're right. It stinks going to an NFL game because there's no yellow line to tell you where the first down line markers are.
I know you have to guess. Like that. Yeah, you actually have to pay attention.
Yeah, it's a total drag. Where if you're watching the game at home, you can just flip channels. You can go to the baseball playoffs. You can do whatever. But in an NFL game, you're stuck there. And but I got to ask you this though: before the game, do they still have the Cardinal mascot come down from the rafters on a zip tie line? Or
no, they did not do that this time. So it was just a standard. They had the little runway there for the players to come out and everything, and that was pretty much it. We didn't see the Cardinal mascot doing anything. What's the word we're looking for? Dangerous, or potentially catastrophic. No, none of that.
Yeah, well, November 1st, I'm going to go watch a college football game in Las Vegas. Actually, that's not the reason we're going there, but I'm going to go watch the UNM game against UNLV as just sitting in the stands, not as a media member. So that'll be interesting to me because I cannot remember the last time I actually went to a college football game just to watch it.
Yeah,
it's been probably since I was in college. It's been that long. But I've been to NFL games.
At least you're going to have a better venue. I mean, I had my experience last week with the Lobo game, and not that it was a bad experience other than, what we talked about with the, with the hordes of people on the north side of the concourse there. But I got to imagine, I mean, going to the Raiders stadium where, everything's going to be spread out, and, you're probably going to have maybe 30,000 people there if you're lucky. I mean, it depends on, on how well UNLV is playing, and obviously the Lobos too. We'll have to wait and see what happens here in the next few weeks with them. But, I think you'll have a far better experience than I did with the UNM Aggie game.
Yeah, well, UNLV is still undefeated. They're one of the few FBS teams that are still unbeaten. If they win this weekend, they become bowl eligible, which would make them one of the first. Them and Fresno State could become bowl eligible out of the Mountain West. Of course, the Lobos lost last weekend. They played at San Jose State game. That man, they had a shot. They could have won that thing, but they had too many mistakes. They only had 8. I think it was 6 or 8 penalties, but it seemed like every one of them was really costly.
Yeah. Yeah.
But they hung in there. They had a shot right till the very end. They scored with 3 minutes, 45 seconds to go, and they were down by 7, and they had all 3 timeouts, a 2-minute warning, and they never got the ball back.
Yeah, I was going to say they couldn't get the stop that they needed there at the end. But it was kind of like that the entire game. It just kind of felt like they were always playing catch up the whole time.
Yeah. But that same night, we're in Pojoaque. We're going to go to a break.
Oh, yes.
Yeah, I want to talk. We're going to go to a break, but we're going to come back and talk about that game because that one, it had some historical significance to it, and we'll kind of get into some of the history side of stuff when we come back. We'll talk some high school sports and just kind of put a bow on this show because I know Matt's got a very important day in front of him. Our producer, he needs to get out of here, so we're going to try to make this as short as possible.
And you should do a prop bet to see if I'm still here when we come back from the break.
Right. Hopefully by then that giant white light that is up here in this corner will have swooped down and gotten all the way
swooped down and taken me away, man.
Right. But we'll take a break. We'll be right back. Well, we're back, and man, some devastating news during our break. James did not go to the Rapture.
Yeah, I know. Apparently, they got names mixed up, and I've been given my rejection letters. So they told me I'm here. I'm here for Armageddon. So
yeah, they told you to go cover that soccer game this afternoon, didn't they?
Yeah, and it starts with that apparently. So
oh man, that's a kick in the teeth, buddy. I'm sorry to see that.
Yeah, I know. It's like when they were, it's like when they reject your credit card application.
Well, look, it was a busy weekend in sports. As we mentioned, the Lobos lost to San Jose State. They do play Boise State this week. And interesting side note about that game is the Lobos, if they lose by more than 14 points, that'll set a Mountain West record for most consecutive losses by at least 14 points to another conference team. They've lost 7 times in a row to Boise State by at least 14. And that ties with Nevada, I believe, or I think it was UNLV against TCU, back when TCU was still in the conference. So,
man,
Lobo's going for a little history.
That's kind of surprising considering how bad Lobo football was for a while there after Rocky.
Yeah. Well, and that was kind of the dark ages. It was right after the Loxley period and all that when Boise joined the conference 12 years ago. So the history is slanted heavily in Boise State's favor. So Lobos, if they can just somehow get closer than 14 points, I think you can consider that a victory. So we'll see how that goes. Look, last weekend, while the Lobos were losing to San Jose State, you were in Hakona covering the Pojoaque Robertson game.
Yeah.
Now, on paper, I every week we publish a story every Thursday. They
were very happy with you after your predictions.
Well, yeah, and that's the thing is that I make my predictions. That come out every Thursday. Of course, I had no idea that half of Robertson's team would be caught vaping and kicked out. So if I'd have known that, I would have had my prediction a little bit differently. But even then, Pojoaque needed to have that game because look, if you lose that game, it's fine. It's Robertson, but they are a team that was 2-2. They've been killed by injuries. They had one game wiped out. They're probably going to lose to Dexter anyway. But in a lot of ways, I don't know if you call that was a must-win game, but I think that's a game that no matter what gets them into the state playoffs because you beat Robertson. Great. That's a nice, big, shiny star on your resume. But
it is.
You were there. You got to see it. Let's just carry us through what it was like to actually see Pojoaque beat Robertson for the first time ever.
Well, I mean, we talked about the injury bug, and they were actually this is the healthiest that they've been since the start of the season. And I think you kind of saw just how good they could be with all of their pieces there. They were able to run the ball really well. They went for over 200 yards. They were also able to throw the ball because of that. And Josh Gonzalez had himself quite the game. He had over 100 yards rushing. I think he had 168 yards passing, or 165 yards passing, and 2 touchdowns out of that. Um, you kind of saw what how Pojoaque's offense was going to work, and they did a great job, and it helps too when Robertson doesn't have their entire defense there. They were probably missing about 3 or 4 of their key starters and a couple of reserves, and so they really had that limited their ability to run different types of packages and stuff, and so Pojoaque really took advantage of that. And then on the flip side, Robertson, I mean, they had 10 guys basically playing the entire game, and they were still able to run the ball pretty well on Pojoaque. It was a great back and forth game. I think at one point they combined to score like 28 points within about a 2-minute stretch. I mean, it was just really just it looked like first to 50 was going to win, and then the defenses tightened up, and it was funny to see both teams really tried to focus on the running game to try to wear each other out, and all they did was just shorten the game. I think there were like a grand total of like 6 possessions in the second half. By the time they were done with their opening possessions in the third quarter, we had about a minute left. Actually, no, we had just finished the fourth quarter by the time Robertson was getting ready for its field goal. That when it tied the score at 24. And it's funny talking to Lucas Sanchez at the end of the game when they scored first in overtime and kicked the field goal or kicked the extra point. Pojoaque got called for an offsides. They moved it closer to the 1.5. And he said if he'd had his normal personnel, he probably goes for 2. But because he didn't have that option available, and they really didn't have an alternate formation or really a personnel set that they thought could work in that situation, he just said we just went for 1 and put it in the hands of our defense. And it didn't quite work out. Pojoaque goes and scores a touchdown, and then they go for 2. And Zeke Villegas, their head coach, told me he was going to do that. No matter what Robertson did, he was going for 2 no matter what, either to win the game or to tie it. And, they had a great play. It was a run-pass option play. Josh Garcia made the right decision because he saw the receivers were covered and he had blocking in front of him. Beat the Robertson defense to the edge, got to the corner, got to the pylon there, scores a 2-pointer, and, all hell broke loose then. And, it's a great win for Pojoaque. I think, like you said, this will get him into the playoffs. But I still think, a couple of more wins, if they can get to like 5-4, 6. I mean, 6-3 may not be possible. I mean, you still got West, Hope, and St. Mike's left to play, and that I think Hope's maybe the best shot they have at winning next week, this upcoming weekend. They'll be playing at Hope, but then they finish with West, they finish with St. Mike's. Those are going to be 2 really tough games. But it also is going to depend on how. I think West might be the tougher game. They just have a little bit more depth. And we can allude, we can kind of segue our over to St. Mike's with this. But one thing that Joey Fernandez talked about when I saw him Friday night, because they were scouting Pojoaque, is they're hurting. They lost their Pete Johnson again to an MCL tear apparently, and they hope that he'll be back by the playoffs. I believe Dylan Pacheco, their biggest and maybe their best offensive lineman, was out. Yeah. They lost their reserve running back who was starting to come along. And they just keep taking hits. And at some point, there's only so many injuries that you can take before finally, maybe that it just finally comes crushing down on you. And I think we're at that point with St. Mike's. If they suffer, I think maybe 1 or 2 more injuries, I mean, this thing could really go sideways pretty quickly for them.
Yeah. I was at the St. Mike's Hope game on Saturday, but one thing I think we should mention here is that you, myself, and our sports designer Eric Hedlund have a little private text chat that we keep going pretty much all week. And I like how during the game on Friday night, you texted us a picture of the Robertson sideline, and you said that when the coaches called for defense, the defensive personnel, only one guy came out. The other 10 guys just stayed out there.
It was just one guy coming out in the field.
Defense, let's go. And it's one guy sitting on the bench over there playing with a water bottle.
It was like you just should have said, "One, get your butt out there." That was pretty much it. You didn't need to say defense. Your defense was out there already.
And you showed the picture of the sidelines, and there was more coaches than players out there. That's how bad it was.
I mean, it was rough to watch, and and like I said in my story, and even in my column today, they really only played 13 guys. I mean, there were a couple of players that made it onto the special teams, but for the most part, he was substituting maybe one or two guys in and out every other play and everything. But the bulk of that team was out there, and they played over 100 plays.
Yeah.
And that's pretty taxing. And I was impressed with their conditioning. They did not look like a tired team by the end of the year. I mean, by the end of the game, they just didn't have the ability to be able to slow down Pojoaque, just because, again, when you're missing key guys on your defense and you're asking other guys to fill in, those are the things that are going to happen.
Yeah, and at the end of the day, when the selection committee sits down and they look at all the charts and the algorithms and all that stuff, they're not going to see that Pojoaque beat Robertson when Robertson was shorthanded. They're just going to see that Pojoaque beat Robertson.
Yeah,
which is a big win. Anytime you can beat Robertson, no matter what the circumstance, it does look good for you. And certainly Pojoaque has a chance to puff out their chest. And I know it kind of rubs some of the St. Mike's people the wrong way because, you and I both know Zeke Villegas. I guess Zeke he's gesticular, and he'll turn around and he'll gesture to the crowd. And of course, some of the St. Mike's people are like, well, he's doing it to us. And so we're going to remember that.
Because we know Joey never turns down an opportunity to find something to motivate his team. Right?
Yeah, and so St. Mike's wound up playing the next day. They played in Albuquerque against Hope Christian and just absolutely woodshed those guys. It was crazy. They were up 27-0 in the end of the first quarter. The only thing wrong with it, you would never know that team was beat up because they just steamrolled Hope. They scored, I think, the first 4 touchdowns off 7 plays. Amazing. Yeah, and the only thing that they had wrong is their kicking game was not great. They're trying to work in a couple of kickers, a couple of different holders, but when you're up 40-0 at halftime, does it really matter?
It doesn't matter when you're up 40-0, but if you're up 14-13, it might, or down 14-13, it might.
And now,
they haven't had that chance. That hasn't happened to them yet.
Right.
When you think about it, I mean, from the beginning of last year to now, there's really been one game where they've been pushed into the fourth quarter, and that was a championship game against Dexter. And I mean, there's a possibility it could be just like that again this year.
Yeah, you keep waiting for that moment where somebody comes along and kind of punches these guys in the mouth and keep going, but it hasn't happened. They just absolutely crush teams, and their defensive front is probably the strongest part about that team. They really do a good job of penetrating the backfield. Yeah. And their offensive line, look, with all the problems on offensive line, they've got a couple of guys that are pretty far south of the 200-pound mark.
A few. I mean, I think now they're down to one guy that's over 200 pounds on that line with Dylan being out.
Well, and then they had the goalie from the soccer team, Reedus. He came out and played offensive line. First time he's ever started a game in football in his life.
My gosh.
And they put him on the offensive line. He wasn't really sure what he's doing, but it worked. They just moved the ball like a machine. And Hope Christian came into the game 5-1. They had really beaten some
It wasn't like it was a bad Hope team.
Yeah, and they just pounded them. And now, so the big game this weekend, in a lot of ways, this is for seeding. Hope against Pojoaque. And, Hope in a lot of ways is like Robertson. They're kind of, I don't want to say one-dimensional because it sounds detrimental. It sounds like I'm insulting them, but they're a team that plays with a quarterback who does a lot of running, a lot of throwing, and the offense flows through him, just like every Robertson team usually does. And the thing is, if you can stop him, you have a chance of beating Hope. And that's certainly what St. Mike's did. St. Mike's zeroed in on RJ Montoya and just absolutely crushed him. And so if Pojoaque can win that game, all of a sudden you're 4-2, you're still undefeated in the district, you have 2 games left. Now you're looking at potentially a home playoff game. I think if you can finish third in that district, it's definitely good enough for a home playoff game in the first round.
Yeah, and they would, and in that circumstance, because I'm assuming that Robertson probably loses again to West this weekend because they're going to have 13 guys unless things change. And if they do get a few extra players there, that might actually be that might tip the scales in Robertson's favor because even with 13 guys that they played. Nathan Gonzalez, obviously you alluded to him, and he's a key piece of that offense. But you see Andres Sanchez, Elijah Ortiz. Those are 2 guys in the run game that were really strong throughout the game against Pojoaque. And Ortiz had a great 80-yard kickoff return that gave him a 14-6 lead early in that game. They've got good weapons all around them. It's just simply a matter of how many plays can you get out of them? And I'm sure Lucas Sanchez is being smart enough to slow the game down, try to eat up as much time on that clock. So that way these guys, get 30, 25, 30, 35 seconds to rest in between plays. So that way they're just not worn out. And it worked out well last week, but I wouldn't be surprised if West Las Vegas tries to go a little bit more up tempo to try to wear them out. Because that's kind of what you want to do when you got a team that doesn't have any depth.
Now, starting with Tuesday's newspaper, if you picked it up, if you're still one of those types that still gets the physical newspaper, but in print and online editions, we started a new thing this week, which is our high school athlete of the week. Every week we will profile an athlete. Doesn't necessarily have to be someone with gaudy stats or did something incredibly heroic. Just a kid who you think deserves a spotlight, and we're certainly willing to take nominations from anyone who reads paper, anyone who wants to send us suggestions. They can.
We're going to get loaded with that now. We know that.
Sports at sfnewmexican.com. You can send us that your nominations, and of course, last week was the obvious choice, low hanging fruit.
Yeah,
Kamal Stith, St. Mike's quarterback, threw for 5 touchdowns, ran for 2, helped St. Mike's beat Hope 47-8. He had a hand on every single touchdown they had. He had all of his passing yards by halftime, threw for 242 yards. The guy was unstoppable, but it doesn't have to be a player like that. Now, if it's somebody who's coming back from an injury or somebody who's faced some kind of adversity, or maybe it's kind of like what last year when the Santa Fe Indian School girls soccer team won its first game in 5 years, something along those lines. If you feel like you have an athlete to promote, let us know, and James will take care of it.
Yeah, of course. Thanks for taking the hit the first week, man. I'll take it from here.
That'll run every Tuesday because like I mentioned last week in the podcast, that newsletter we send out every week, it's only the equivalent of 8 or 10 inches, which is not a very long.
But it takes a long time, doesn't it?
It takes me all day to write that thing. Every single time. I don't know what it is about that. It's kind of, it reminds me of my old high school days when I had to do some of those things in Miss Tapia's class where we had to memorize poems that I couldn't stand, and I'd have to get up and this is the same thing. I just don't want to do it. It's not that hard, but I make it more difficult on myself. So that's your problem now. The athlete of the week.
Sure. Oh, I know, man. Boy, man, doing anything high school related just triggers all of your high school memories there, doesn't it?
Yeah,
all the bad ones at least.
It brings back terrible memories. And speaking of, one last thing about high school, our former intern Henry Kaufman, shout out to his mother. It is her 23rd birthday today, Jenny Kaufman. For I believe the 24th year in a row, she turns 23 today. So happy birthday to Jenny Kaufman. But one last thing, James, I want to talk to you about some historical significance. So we mentioned Pojoaque's win against Robertson, first time ever. But St. Mike's, the football team, has won 27 games in a row.
Yeah.
They have a bye week this week. They have a chance to get a little bit healthier. They can take a week off, which will certainly help them. But they have a clear path to finishing the regular season undefeated, which would give them 30 in a row. And by the end of the season, they could actually move into sole possession of third place for the longest streak ever in the state of New Mexico.
Right.
And there's a lot of people, Brian Barker, our assistant managing editor, who can't stand hearing about St. Mike's' success, but this is a very rare thing, especially in the city of Santa Fe, to have that level of success in football. I know it's St. Mike's and people are going to roll their eyes about it, but what are your thoughts on? Yeah, what are your thoughts on the significance of the streak they have going right now?
Well, I think this has truly been one of the more remarkable runs that I've seen that Joey Fernandez has had. I mean, we talked about the team 2011, 2012, 2013. Those 3 teams right in a row were really, really good. And the unfortunate thing is that he only got 1 state championship out of that. That was a tough loss to Lovington one year. They barely beat Silver, and then obviously we talked about the injury stuff with this group. They had the same issue back in 2013 when they were trying to go for the repeat, and it bit them in the butt when they got to the playoffs. But man, Joey's just done an amazing job. And then when you consider, especially with the injuries that they're dealing with this year, and the fact that they don't have the kind of depth that they did the last 2 years, it just shows you how remarkable he's been able to kind of plug in all these, fill these gaps where, the dam might be springing a leak. And I think it just says a lot about where his football acumen is right now. I'd love to see him at a 5A school. I mean, with what he's been able to do at St. Mike's over the last 23 years now, this is the kind of guy that's like, man, I'm surprised, that Santa Fe High hasn't tried to go after him, or that, an Albuquerque school hasn't tried to get him, because he's a guy that can transform programs. And I think some of it is just part culture, but the other part is he he has got a really sharp football mind, and he knows how to get the most out of his teams.
Yeah, could you see him at a place like La Cueva, which has got
Ooh,
an
yeah.
endless supply of talent that comes through there? Oh my gosh, it'd be insane. Look, the guy's on pace to eventually, if he keeps going at this pace, he will pass Eric Roanhouse for the all-time wins. He's going to have to coach like another 16 years, which would put him over 70. But the guy has shown no signs of slowing down at all, especially if he coaches at 3A. Gives it like 3A is what it is. It's not exactly the 6A level, but the guy he's continued to win at such a phenomenal pace, and he's done it with a school enrollment that is smaller than Santa Fe Prep. He's made the most out of what he has. And you look at the team, it's like I mentioned to some of the players after the game against Hope.
Yeah, you got a soccer player playing on the offensive line.
Yeah, they get off the bus. They're not winning games by getting off the bus. You look at them getting off the bus, you're thinking,
yeah, you got a shot.
Yeah, where's the beef? These guys are not a lot of big dudes on that team. And you look at a player like Ryan Hunt, looks like a monster on the field, but he's really not that big of a kid. I'm not sure what his height and weight is, but I would guess it's around 6 feet, maybe 190 pounds. But he plays like an NFL defensive lineman in that system. But yeah, I think the fact that they just continue to win, despite the fact that it hasn't been easy behind the scenes, and they're throttling teams left and right.
Well, I think it's one of those things. It's either St. Mike's is just that good, or 3A is that bad where they can. Yeah. I mean, it might be a combination of both.
Yeah. Yeah. It makes you wonder what happens next year, because last season, even though they had Reed Bass as a starting quarterback, you knew Kamal Stith was coming in. Yeah. He was a quality quarterback. You could see a lot of the underclassmen, like Isaiah Dominguez was going to be there. Braden Hollis was coming back. Ryan Hunt. But a lot of these guys are kind of getting older. And so who's going to be the quarterback next year? Who's going to be the running back? Who are the guys that really step forward and continue this going? So it can't go on forever. This will be their fifth straight year in state championship game. So
we keep talking about all the talent that they're losing, and yet somehow they keep finding guys to step in to fill those roles. So don't discount Joey just yet, man. He's probably. I mean, I know they've got some good kids coming up. You know, obviously there'll be a little bit of inexperience next year, especially with those guys. But I never discount Joey Fernandez. It's kind of like what we say with Robertson. It's like no matter what, who the personnel, the personnel is, and even the coaches. I mean, they've gone from Leroy to Lucas, and they're still performing at a pretty high level. It's just you just pencil them in. They're either going to be 1, 2, or 3 somewhere in the 3A rankings.
Yeah. Well, that'll do it for this week's show. Like I told you guys right before we started, I reached out to Adam Deal to join us last week. I texted him right after we did our podcast, and he agreed. He was all for it, and I completely forgot to reach out to him again. So sorry, Adam Deal. We'll have him on next week. That's how disorganized our podcast scheduling goes. Like some of these other podcasts have governor candidates on there. We have you and I talking about the rapture when the sun gets on your camera. So there's that. Oh, there you go. But that'll do it for this week. A lot of high school stuff going on this week. Some really significant storylines coming forward for you. So we'll keep you updated. And again, if you have any any updates or any nominations for Athlete of the Week, email them at sports@sfnewmexican.com. And that'll do it for this week.